Hello. I thought I would make a video on a stash buster in chunky. This is my compact cranny square pattern, and I have quite a few videos on it. Some of you might know it and some of you might not. I am using a large crochet hook. This is a 6mm, and it goes really quickly. It works out very quickly. I'm using two threads. So I was busy using the orange one, and I measured it across. This is 7 inches across, and I have 3 balls of this. They're all the same. They all come from the same packet. This is from the shop called Aldi, and it's a So Crafty. And there was a 4th color. I guess I've used it up. The red seems to be a little bit thinner, so I'll see how it knits up because I want to join the squares. So I don't know if there's enough of the orange to make another one, but as it's a stash buster, I will just improvise. So let me put the orange aside. The red doesn't show up well on my camera, so put that on the side. And I don't need all the greens. This ball's already been opened. This one comes from Poundland, and I have a couple of balls of this particular dye lot because the dye lots do change, so I had to match them up. And it has something in it that makes it a bit springy. So this is 100% acrylic, but it tends to bounce, which is quite fun to knit up. I use it quite a lot as a chunky by mixing it with my double knits. These ones here are quite thick double knits. They're not thinner. Normally I would use a 5.5 or a 5 mil when I'm using a thin DK with this Poundland yarn, but it's not in here. But today I'm using a 6. I tried it out first with a 5.5, and it wasn't comfortable because the size of the hook just wasn't big enough to grab the two yarns comfortably. So sometimes I was finding that I was only carrying one yarn across, and I didn't want that. So I'll get that one ready. I am using up the remnants of another ball. I have my needle, and I'll be using my darning thread, my needle soon. I have my scissors available. I was making these earlier, so that used up quite a lot of the orange. The little flowers. I could have used them as a center, but if I want to, I can always sew them on afterwards. That's not a problem. These are my popcorn stitch. So I have lots of videos on popcorn stitch, and I usually put them in the center of a square. I really just wanted something that crocheted up quickly and was using up my stash of yarn. So it's always a bit of a problem if I haven't worked the ball earlier. There's a knot there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it. And when I get there, it will fall apart, but that's fine because I don't knit my knots in. I come back later. I leave tails, and then later on I come back and sew away the bits. I don't trust the manufacturers when they make a knot. Okay, there we go. I'll put my scissors on the side. So this is just really a basic compact, my compact square. There's many different compacts out there. One little note is, if you're new to my channel, I reverse my squares every row, and that gives me an even result. because of the way that I hold my yarn and my tension. If I don't, my squares veer off to the side and then I get lopsided squares. So as far as possible, I reverse them in this particular stitch. Starting off with, and I got the camera in a different angle today, so there might be a shadow. I'm going to try and sit in a way with 3 lights focused on me and the overhead light. Hope it'll be okay. So I'm starting off, I'm going to leave a little bit extra tail because I've noticed that as I was working at the tail was sneaking up. So be a little bit generous with the tail. I'm starting off with a magic circle with the tail in front. Wrap it around the finger. Just excuse my stomach if you can hear it. I'm not hungry, it's just digesting. So as you can see, like that, then I slip the hook underneath and I go and fetch the yarn, keep it on the hook, fetch the yarn again and pull tight. That's my slip knot. And take the tail out and let it hang there. Chain 1 up, chain another. Sometimes I chain 1, sometimes I chain 2. This is the starting row, so I'll just chain 2. See how you feel. Then we're going to make our double crochet. This is US terms. I think in the UK you would call it a treble. Go back. So I've chained 2 up from the slip knot. Wrap the yarn, go under, fetch the yarn. Go 3 on the hook. Go pull through 2, pull through 2. And that's a double crochet. I'm going to make clusters of 3 with 1 chain between the clusters. This counts as a double crochet because I made 2 chains there. I could have made it a step up, in which case I would have made 1 chain, but I've decided not to. Okay, chain 1 for the corner, make another cluster of double crochets, clusters 3. First row is always a bit tricky. You just have to do your best to try and keep that magic circle more or less manageable. You can pull it a bit tighter, but not too tight because you've got to work into it. And you've got to keep count. So there's 3, chain 1 for the corner. My arm is making a noise on it. I'll move the camera just slightly because my arm's making a noise. Excuse me. Where were we? 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, 1, 2. What I've done there. Be careful that when you're working with 2 threads, so I've had to go back. Chain 1, 1, 2, and 3. So check, I've got 1 cluster, I've got 2 clusters, I've got 3 clusters, I've got 4. Chain 1, and now we're going to join to the beginning. The tail keeps getting wrapped in there, pulling it tight. And what we're going to do is we're going to be actually joining to that chain 2 If you look at your clusters, you'll see there's one, if you look at your clusters, you see there's one double crochet and another double crochet. If you want, you can actually put your hook between there, just so that you know where you are. And on top of that, you'll see a V. So don't make the error of going into the V that's to the left of your double crochet here. It must go to the right, and that is the top chain. You go into that V, we can make a slip knot. You fetch your yarn, you're going to pull it through, and then you're going to pull it through again. Not a slip knot, sorry, a slip stitch. Keep getting the words mixed up. So now you have a slip stitch. And this is how I do it. I have two different methods. Sometimes I chain up. Today I'm going to be doing this particular method, which is I go back. So there's my hole. There's my chain one, which joined the two. There's my slip knot. There's my finger. I'm going to go back into that hole. I'm going to fetch the yarn. I'm going to bring it out. And then I'm going to slip it through two. It's what you would call the single crochet. And then I'm going to chain one. And that is going to count as a half double crochet. Let me do it again. So we've done our slip stitch. Put your finger through the hole where you've just come from. You'll see there's a big gap. Put your hook in there, fetch your yarn, bring it up. And you've got two on your hook, two loops. You're going to fetch the yarn again, and you're going to pull through both. It's a single crochet. You're going to chain one. That counts as a double crochet. What you're going to do now is you're going to turn your work. You can turn it either way. You can go like that. You can go like this. Try and stay consistent because of the way it looks. So I'm just going to flip it that way. And now I'm going to be working anti-clockwise as we do in crochet. And I'm going to make a double crochet and another double crochet. And as I'm working into the corner, there are four corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are where those chain ones are. Because I'm working into a corner, I have to make two clusters with a chain between them. So there is 1, 2, 3, chain one, and we make another 3 double crochets in here. Now remember that single crochet plus a chain one counts as a double crochet. So when I say 3, we're counting that as a double crochet. Now here is where I differ with some granny square patterns, in that I do not chain between clusters when it's on the side. The only place I chain is when I make the corners and when I'm stepping up, and obviously when I've started. The rest of the time there's no chain. It was worked in this direction, because you can see the V's are lying this way. A cluster of 3 double crochets, cluster of 3 double crochets, and in the corner, that's what you get in the corner. You get your 3, you get a chain 1, and you get your 3. And when I've stepped up, which should be over here, there's my little step up. That's a single crochet and a chain 1, and then it turned in that direction. So there's the single crochet, chain 1, which counts as a double crochet, and then 2 double crochets, but now it's on the side, because that's what's going to happen. It shifts, it moves across like that. So it does not stay in the corner. You'll think, well, maybe it'll always be in the corner. No, it doesn't. It migrates. So there's no chain because I am working on the side of row 2. Now I'm back in the corner. 3 double crochets, create the corner, chain 1. In the same space, 3 double crochets. Mustn't pull too tightly. Unfortunately, the first 2 rows I tend to work under tension, but as I get further on, my tension does loosen up. But it's hard on my hands if I'm pulling too tightly. So I'm now on a side, so there's no chain one, coming into a corner. 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Whoops. That's why the 5.5 was too small. It kept doing that. It wasn't catching. So this counts as a chunky yarn. So there's my corner. I'm on the side. There's no chain. I'm in the next corner. So it's 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. Just try and make sure that the last one gets right into that little groove there. That's not obvious in the first row because we're working into a magic circle, but on the second row, when I'm making my clusters of 6, 2 clusters, which means 6 6 double crochets into a corner, the last one mustn't make it too loose, otherwise it's going to gape. So now I'm on a side, and I've realized that I've come to the end of the row. I don't chain 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look for the top of this. Remember, there was a single crochet and a chain 1, and it lies to the right hand side. 2 double crochets of that cluster. You're going to go into the right hand side of that double crochet. You don't make the mistake of going into that one. You've gone too far. You go into the right hand side. Right hand side. You're going to fetch the yarn and you're going to pull it through again. Slip stitch. Now we are going to repeat the process of what's called a step-up stitch. I'm going to go backwards, fetch the yarn, 2 loops on the hook, fetch the yarn again, pull it through. One chain, and that is a step-up stitch. Counts as a double crochet. Turn my work, and now the makeup is a little bit different from the previous row because I'm not working in a corner. I'm actually now on the side. So now, from now onwards, all the step-up stitches are going to be on the side and not in the corner. So this group, this cluster, is comprised of 3 double crochets. We already have 1 here. This is a step-up stitch. So we're going to make 2 more. 1, 2. And remember, when we come to the end of the row, now you can see clearly, because it was a bit difficult with all the other stitches in the way, I've got this group. When we come to the end of the row, it's this blue one here we're going to be working into, not the orange one. That is the difference from when you actually count your step up as a stitch or when you make it invisible. In some patterns, they want the step up to be invisible. It doesn't count as a stitch. And when that's the case, you'll be working into the left-hand side. And what it does, literally, it makes the step-up stitch disappear like that. And if that was the case, I'd have to make another double crochet. And that can be tricky because different people have different techniques. Some people like to make it invisible, in which case I wouldn't even have made the chain. I would have just made the step-up stitch, no chain, and I would have gone straight into a double crochet, and a 3rd double crochet. But then coming back, I wouldn't work into the blue, which is to the right-hand side of that. I'd work into the orange. It sounds a bit complicated, but it makes such a difference because sometimes you think, I don't understand why it looks different each row. And also this can bulge. If you go to that side, it's going to bulge. You're going to have all kinds, it's going to be a little bit distorted. So this is really, really important if you are new to making granny squares, to understand. Because as I said, some people have different ways, and from one pattern to the next, or one video to the next, you'll see different ways of doing it, and you think, well, I'm sure I did it differently last time. Yes, because it depends whether that's called a step-up stitch or whether it's just an invisible step-up. So here we are. I'm in the corner, and I'm making a cluster of 3 double crochets. I've chained 1. I'm making 3 double crochets. I'm tucking them nicely in because we don't run out of space. Just tuck it nicely in. You give it a little pull with this yarn here, with your working yarn. You just, when you get in there, just give it a little pull, look, like a little jerk, and it finds its way into that groove. Just helps it in the corners. The sides is not necessary. You've got enough space for your 3 double crochets. And I always increase my tension when I get to the corners. That's why row 1 and row 2 are difficult, because it's all corners. So I work under tension. But now that I've passed those, I can relax a bit. Just when I get to the corners, I work under tension. There we go. Chain 1. And I'm coming around the corner and I need to tuck it in. So it's a little jerk, jerk, little jerk, just a little one. Try to tuck it in. Even maneuver the square a little bit, just tuck it in. It goes fast, so it's not obvious visually if you don't know what you're looking for. If you're watching someone crochet, their movements might be so subtle. And look, even my fingers here are pulling open this square, this corner, so that I can get the first group in, really into that space. This is with chunky yarn. I can pull and tug, and when the squares are very little, then I wouldn't be able to get my whole finger in there. With the chunky yarn, just pull it there. It's quite possible. Come into the side, it's fine, and relax my hands. If I had to make a whole lot of squares out of chunky yarn, and the squares were only 2 or 3 rows, I would spend all my time under tension. So to make a bigger square is practical, but the problem is it gets to a point where I've got too much fiber in my hands, and I don't like to work long rows. So a 6 or a 7 inch is perfect for me. I'd rather join them afterwards than work endless rows. I have made blankets where I've worked endless rows, and I don't get as much satisfaction as I do from working small squares. And if one's not careful, and when you're working endless rows, as it progresses, one can change one's tension, and then the fabric can actually sag a bit, because as it gets heavier in the way in your lap, or it's the first rows might have a different tension than the later rows. I've come back to the beginning of my row, and as I gave you a long explanation in the last one, you'll remember. So I'm just going to go into the blue, fetch the yarn, bring it all the way through my slip stitch. I'm stepping back, bringing the yarn through, single crochet, and I'm chaining 1, turning my work, and into that space 2 double crochets. If you've made lots of granny squares and you have a preferred way of stepping up, then by all means do that, because that's your muscle memory, and you might prefer that. I'll show you another technique when I get to the end of this row that I sometimes use. I don't have a hard and fast rule. It's pretty much the flavor of the day. And sometimes if one's working with a unicolor, sometimes the color is very unforgiving. It shows every little bump and every stitch that's made. And if one wants it to be more invisible, then one could use the invisible stepping up or another technique. But this is so chunky, it really doesn't mind that I use the single crochet technique. Going backwards. One really needs to adapt. So it is handy to have different techniques, to know them, to have practiced them. And then even if a pattern calls for one particular way, if your yarn is different, then you think, well, okay, I'm finding this particular technique of going from one row to another is not suitable for this yarn. I'm just going to adapt it. Oh, what have I done there? Something felt wrong. Okay. If it feels wrong, I'll just undo it. Whoops. That does sometimes happen, that I make a corner and I have only made 2 double crochets. Sometimes I even sneak in a 4th one. That's quite often either when I'm very engrossed in a TV series, or I've been interrupted in something, and when I've been interrupted in my crochet, and then the muscle memory's been disrupted. It's like a little glitch. It makes one stitch too many or not enough stitches. Corner, chain 1. See, already the hand's starting to get full with the square. This is row 1, 2, 3, 4. How many rows do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, you'll think, well, I'm halfway there, but not actually, because each row has more stitches, so the work will slow down as you progress. This happens, especially when one's using 2 yarns together. Some people like to pre-mix all their yarns, especially if they almost only work in chunkies, but I don't, so I do it this way. You could use a wool winder, or just with your own hands you can just pre-mix a whole lot of yarn. I've come to the end of the row, so let me show you the other technique of going up. So I'm going into the right hand side of this double crochet. That's my little chain from the previous row. I'm going in and I'm going straight through. I'm making a slip knot. Then I chain 2 and turn the work. It is flat, you see. There is no bulge. Then I would make 2 double crochets and continue. It sits a little bit to the side there. If you want to make an invisible step up, come to the end of your row. You're going to go in there to your chain. You're going to slip all the way through. You've got two options. You can either you can twist it around. So now, before I've made my single crochet, I've already turned the work. Now look where the yarn is lying. See, sometimes the yarn is lying there, and I go back and make my single crochet. You can turn it. Your yarn is now going over your work, depending on how you. Some people actually crochet with the yarn in that hand. But in this case, the yarn is going over your work. You're going to go in, and you're going to make a single crochet. But you're not going to chain one. What you're going to do instead, you can give it a little tug. What instead you're going to do is you're going to make 3 double crochets. That there, it will not count as a double crochet. It's just an invisible step up. When you come back, you'll be working into this loop here. This one here, this orangey one, it's quite handy, they're different colors. The orangey one becomes a non-stitch, becomes invisible, so I'm going to tuck it away. Looking at your makeup there, you have to work into the top V to the right hand side, and it turns out to be that one. So you'll be working into there. So there are different ways of actually stepping up. I'm going to show you a third way, fourth way. You come to the end of your row. As I said, you just find out which one you like, and as I said, the yarn will influence it. Another way is you go in, you fetch your yarn, you slip stitch, whoops, fetch your yarn, you slip stitch, chain 1, you turn your work, and you make your 3 double crochets. This was quite handy if you're making half double crochets, which I think are called half trebles in the UK, I don't know. Once again, that little guy there becomes an invisible stitch, it doesn't count, and you're left with your 3 double crochets. This one doesn't count, so you're not even counting that little orangey thing there. So if you pull it like that, what do you have when you come back? You have that blue one, and that's where you're going to be working into, to the right hand side of the middle stitch. It's to the left hand side of the first stitch. It's basically the top of the first stitch. But that's not obvious because you've got this little guy floating around. You have to really imagine that he's gone, that he's just completely invisible. So you have many ways. You can try them out. It's all different ways to get up. I just like my little single crochet going back. So that's what I've been doing all this time. I'm going to continue to do that. So my double crochet, going to the top, the purple one, going in there, fetching it, bring it all the way through, stepping back through the hole, fetching my yarn again, bringing it through 2 loops, give it a little tug, chain 1, and that is now a full stitch. It's not invisible. Turn my work and 2 double crochets. That's what it looks like. That's just one of my favorites. I just like it. and the row continues. You just continue until you have the desired size of your square. If I wanted to make smaller ones, I could finish this row. It'd be quite a cute size. But I want to make 4 of them and attach them together. So I'm hoping I'll have enough of the red. Be easy enough to have lots of green ones because I have quite a few balls of the green. So I'm going to continue with this. To work away the tail, so we have the tail, and I want to make it into an invisible V because I will be sewing them all together later. So if you look at the makeup of each group, so if we pinch it on that top of that one there, pinch the top of that one there, we have 3 V's: pink, purple, orange. Let's go to another one. Go to the top of this group, pinch it. Go to the top of this group, pinch it. You have 3. You need the tally to be right if you're going to be sewing them together, which I will be doing. I'll be sewing them into each one. I'll be sewing them correctly. To make an invisible V, go into the V, bring it down. Before we work it away, we're going to count. We're going to make sure. Top of this one, pinch. Top of this one, pinch. We've got 3. Blue, orange, purple, pink. Move it across. Pinch the top of this one. Pinch the top of that one. And you've got 3. Purple, blue, orange. If you really want to make sure, you move across. You pinch the top of that one. Go to this one. You pinch the top of that one. 3. So now you know that you have the correct amount. If you made an error, you could have made this one into the orange one, and then you would have been 1 short. I didn't, so I know that I've got the right amount. And that is a good technique to count like that, because you want to be sure. It doesn't matter if you're making granny squares and you're not attaching them, but it's always so handy to learn the makeup of a square, of a stitch, how it's created, how it's formed, the loops behind. I'm just going to pull this through here. I'm not going to work it away completely, because to work away completely, I will separate them and I will use a sharp one. I just needed to work through that V, so I used a blunt one. This is a chenille needle, and what I do is before I stitch it away, I unravel, and then I try and push the needle as far as I can into the different fibers. The rule of 3, try and work in 3 different directions. So that was 1 direction, so another direction, and I'll go up 3 directions. I'll do the same with the other one. Twist it open. Rule of 3, direction 1. Direction 2. There's no front or back to these squares because it's reversible. So only when I join them that there will be a front and a back. And depending on what stitch I use to join them, could change the front or the back. I try and make them reversible so that the finished article can be reversible as well. Magic circle. This yarn here slips. It comes undone. It's a horrible thing for that. Some yarns don't. This one does. So the first thing I'm going to do is just complete. I should have made this tail a little bit longer. So I could have worked it away better. First thing I'm going to do is work in the same direction as the magic circle was created. Give it a big tug. Do another one. And then I'll separate them and twist it. I'm actually going to work backwards. I'm not going into the same hole, I've got to go over just to make sure that it doesn't actually come unraveled. Then I'm going to go up there and all the way around. See, if the tail was longer, I wouldn't have had to do this each time. See if I can feed it as far as possible. It's most annoying. I'm annoyed with myself. The next square I'll be more generous. This orange, it's got a different kind of wool. It's a different type of yarn. They're both acrylics, but it catches, so I don't have the same worry. One direction, two direction. Can literally go back into the magic circle. Three direction. It's a little bit more tail, so let me just work that away. I'll come snip those later. And remember here, you didn't watch this. So you remember here, and I'm thinking, that wasn't in the video. Joined up. So I undid the knot. The knot was when I was working it. Literally undid the knot and working the tails away. Unravel. Try and go as far as possible with this. Twisting as I go all the way down. See how far I can get. Well, I'm happy with that. I can leave a tiny bit when I'm cutting it off because it will bounce in. little pull when I'm cutting it, just tiny bit. There we go. That's the completed square. 7 inches across, thick. Needle big enough to be comfortable to work with, but not too big that it's floppy, because I want it to be a mat. If it was going to be a blanket and I wanted it to be softer, then yes, I could go up half a size or even another size to a 6.5 and a 7. Then it would make it a floppy blanket, but I didn't want that. It's going to be a mat. So there we go. Thank you very much, and either I will make a video of when it's finished, and I'll put the link below, or there will be another video in how I join them. I have so many videos on joining squares, and I'm not too sure how I'm going to make the edging, maybe a scallop or just a simple join, I don't know yet. So there might be a sequel to this, there might not. Thank you very much. Bye for now.